This is the West Kent Radio News feature. Hello, I'm Julia Neal. Residents in Tonbridge are getting ready for the general election on the 4th of July. There are 7 candidates who are standing for the Tonbridge seat. I'm here today with John Woollcombe, who is standing for the Liberal Democrats. So John, can you tell me a bit about your background and what skills you can bring to the role of being an MP?
Well, I haven't had a political career. I come from a rather different background. I qualified as a barrister, and for about the last 35 years, I've been my own boss. And I think I bring to this a set of skills that are rather different to a lot of politicians. I am probably more disaffected voter than I am personally ambitious politician. But the skills and the rigour and competence that's required to run your own business, be your own boss and bring up a family for 35 years, I think are the sort of skills that I want to bring to constituents in Tonbridge, along with, as I say, 35 years of problem solving, representing, negotiating, advocating for clients across a range of issues. And I now want to apply those for the constituents in Tonbridge.
Can you tell me why you are representing the Liberal Democrats at the election?
Well, fundamentally, I believe the Lib Dem manifesto contains the elements that I agree with across the board, our emphasis in investing in public services and a pragmatic sense of values and fairness for society that I think has been lacking. But fundamentally, one of the elements that I think is really important is that the Liberal Democrats don't have in their wings the extreme elements that both the Tories have and Labour have. And we've seen the impact of the right wing actually influencing the Conservative government under Liz Truss's disastrous prime ministership and the mini budget. I think at any point we could see the same with Labour, because Kier Starmer is speaking a very different language to the language he spoke when he was trying to appease Jeremy Corbyn's supporters. And whether he is dealing with Diane Abbott or someone else on the left wing, at any point we could be threatened by those elements. I am fully behind the Lib Dem policies, and we have a coherent, centrist, unified set of policies that I think mean actually we are the most stable democratic party offering people an opportunity for people to vote for. So
what will your party do to help people beat the cost of living crisis?
Well, we have said that we're going to help people immediately with the cost of living crisis, and any tax impacts that are going to be introduced are not going to affect ordinary people. They are specific to the social media issues for mental health, so there's and bank surcharges. So I think everything that's in the Lib Dem manifesto is about actually providing the public services that people need, and the care, the social care, and improving people's standard of living.
The Liberal Democrat manifesto says spending more money on health and care is a priority. So what exactly would you do?
Well, we've got a broad range of measures. I think, as you probably know, Ed Davey, is a carer himself, and this matters hugely to him. So the investment in care, for whether they're volunteer carers or paid carers, is actually to reduce the pressure on the NHS and avoid people having to go to A&E and putting care more in the homes of people. That's where we would focus our investment.
Is spending more and more on the NHS the right answer? Shouldn't we be trying to look at issues like obesity and try to reduce demands on the NHS?
I think that's 100% right. I think there is no amount of money, ultimately, that can be spent on the NHS to make it perfect for the ageing population and the issues that we have. And I think actually you've touched on something there with preventative health, whereby actually educating people to eat better, take more exercise, look after themselves, will be an important part of actually solving the problems that the NHS have. And as I say, also reforming care so that you have less pressure on A&E and hospital beds from older people. So I think, every party comes to this saying we're going to spend more and more money on the NHS, and it doesn't seem to solve the problem. But take, for example, an issue, if I may, just quickly, that is quite interesting, because recently, in the last couple of months, Rishi Sunak introduced the idea that actually there were too many people taking sick notes and off work. And what he proposed to do was introduce a new layer of bureaucracy, which was health and work specialists. Now, the fact of the matter is, the reason for that, he said, was that GPs don't have enough time to really take care when they're issuing sick notes. But that's a ludicrous way to deal with the issue. What we've realised and addressed in the Lib Dem manifesto is that there are 8,000 GPs who are over the age of 55. So we've got a retirement time bomb with our GPs that actually we're going to have fewer and fewer because more are going to retire. So our manifesto makes it clear we'll invest in 8,000 more GPs to relieve waiting times, to actually so that they don't have to rush these issues of sick notes. And it's a much more pragmatic way to deal with the issue. And we've got to not only actually hire more GPs, one of the things we've got to do is make it better for doctors to work within the NHS, because what we're finding is a lot of doctors are actually leaving the NHS and going to work, whether it be, in Australia or elsewhere, where they can ply their trade and get a better lifestyle and treated better. So it's not merely a question of just hiring more GPs. We need to retain GPs, and we urgently need to get on and recruit more GPs and train up more doctors and treat them better.
One reason why there aren't enough doctors to go around is that there is a rapidly growing population. Partly people have been living longer, but also there's been immigration for people coming into the country. An extra 5 million people in Britain in the past 10 years. Would you tighten up or relax these rules?
Well, I think a lot of these issues are connected. I don't actually think that the demand on the NHS is as a result of immigration. The problem you're touching on there that is actually the significant issue for our NHS is the ageing population. Actually, birth rates are falling, and they're falling not only here but in other countries in the Western world. And there are a lot of people who are concerned about that, because will there be enough young working people to look after an increasingly ageing population? I think the immigration issue becomes a distraction from this. Obviously, it's been a major issue. It's risen under the Conservative government since David Cameron set targets back in 2015. It's continued to rise. We were told that Brexit was actually the means to control immigration. That's not happened at all. And the fact of the matter is, we need more skills. People look at this and say immigration is the source of the problem. You talk to your doctor, they may well be a migrant to this country, and you may be very thankful, but you're treated by someone who, was one of those people that you're saying shouldn't come here. But actually, the reality is immigration is a very nuanced issue that one cannot just treat in that way and relate to our problems with the NHS and an ageing population.
What about rejoining the EU or rejoining the single market? Would your party want the opportunity to explore this avenue if you get into power?
Well, unquestionably. I mean, the Liberal Democrats have been the Remain party throughout. And there's been no division on this. We are the party that has been coherent and of one mind of this issue. And yes, there is no question. We will start right away to rebuild our relationship with Europe. We have a 4-step plan to do that. It's not an issue that right now everyone is talking about because no one can actually say with any certainty we can rejoin the EU within the next Parliament. But certainly the Liberal Democrats would want to rebuild our relationship with Europe. We want to align professional standards. We've committed to rejoining the Erasmus scheme. And when, it was infuriating for young people, I think, to see that Ursula von der Leyen was proposing a youth mobility deal for 18 to 30-year-olds to be able to travel within Europe, both from Europe to this country and from our country to Europe. And it was rejected without debate by both Kier Starmer and Rishi Sunak. And that's incredibly frustrating for young people. They all want to travel. They all gain from the experience. And we would go further. We would have accepted that proposal and gone further and rejoined the Erasmus scheme that would allow students to travel within Europe. So, yes, it's not part of our cast iron commitment in this manifesto, but we are the party that is absolutely of one mind and one voice on this, that we want to rebuild our relationship with Europe. And yes, we would want to rejoin in due course if the opportunity, the circumstances rather, were right for us to rejoin. But those aren't the circumstances at the moment.
Would your party abolish the controversial Randa scheme?
Yes, we would. We've said that we don't think that is a solution to the immigration issue. It's cost a huge amount of parliamentary time. It's cost a huge amount of money. And if people aren't deterred from crossing the channel in small boats and risking the lives of their families to get here, I find it hard to believe that the deterrence of being flown to Rwanda is going to make any difference. It's become a rod for Rishi Sunak's own back. He didn't agree with it initially, and one wonders whether his heart is actually in the policy or not, because the reality is actually immigration is as much about in terms of the criminal gangs that are operating, taking the right measures to tackle that. And that's a multilateral issue. We need to work with our European neighbours. We can't do that unilaterally. So again, a stronger relationship with our European neighbours will enable us to actually pursue multilateral solutions to issues like that. But also, we have a shortage of labour in this country. We need to have a far more efficient system for migrants coming to this country to be able to get them working and contributing to the economy. And there is another element to this that I think is very central to the Lib Dem policy and values, is that we need to value those people's lives. Any number of us could be in any number of situations of the circumstances of those people fleeing repression and whatever, and we need a humanitarian element in our politics.
How would you bring down climate emissions caused by all of us in Britain?
Well, we have a major commitment to insulating homes, to renewable energy, and this is something that actually we did influence under the coalition, and Ed Davey was very influential in that in his role at the time. So we have obviously a commitment to offshore wind, where we have huge advantages and can would invest in that. In terms of our commitment, we have committed to net zero by 2045. That's sort of the realistic figure that we aim for, but powered by renewable energy by 2030. It's going to require a lot of investment, but actually that investment in infrastructure is going to create jobs and prosperity around the country. It's actually a means to tackle what the rather flawed idea of levelling up was meant to do in terms of spreading prosperity around the country. Actually investing in renewable energy and clean tech will spread prosperity around the country, because it's not just something that's based in the south of England or in London. It's actually something in Scotland and the northeast and everywhere that it is a huge opportunity for the country.
What about a direct train service from Tonbridge and Edenbridge to Gatwick Airport?
Well, I've seen this rail link, and I think there is every opportunity for that to happen, and I think it's a very valid point. I think when you touch on Gatwick, that there is that issue, and there's no question about it, but also for a lot of people who live in the constituency near to Gatwick, they have a lot of other concerns that have been raised with me too, about the fact that there isn't a nighttime curfew, which there is at other major airports. So they're disturbed by the noise, particularly this time of year and increasingly through the summer. And they're very worried about the proposed expansion at Gatwick. And I think, so, while that is a relevant issue, I think it's not the only issue that relates to Gatwick. And actually there is for Gatwick, for a number of people, is actually about what is going to happen with the expansion of the airport, and how are the community, those communities that are affected by that, going to see any benefit from that expansion, because their properties are likely to go down in value, and their enjoyment of life is going to be affected badly.
So would you say that you oppose the planned expansion and a second runway at Gatwick Airport?
I think it's not about opposing it, it's about the timing of it and about exactly how it's going to impact and be implemented, and whether there are any benefits for local communities that are going to be affected by it. And I think that, again, there is something in this about technology, because noise reduction technologies will make a huge difference. And being honest, I don't know the timing for introduction of those technologies. It's something I'd want to look into, and I would want to champion local residents to make sure that the effects on them were minimised. And right now, they have a very, they are adversely affected and would be adversely affected. So I think it's a question of whether it's a question of actually opposing it, it's actually looking at the impact and making sure that it doesn't purely adversely affect those local residents, and that there is some benefits coming their way from it.
You have a plan to raise £3.6 billion with an aviation tax, penalising frequent flyers whilst reducing costs for ordinary households who take 1 or 2 international flights a year. How would that work?
Well, I think it's for people who fly more than 3 times a year, there would be an additional payment for every flight that they do, more than that. And I think it's a very fair way to tax people, rather than purely raising taxes arbitrarily. It's actually saying, well, look, if you're going to have a larger carbon footprint because you fly more and you can afford to fly more, then you can afford to pay a little bit more tax. And so implementing that by making sure that people who do fly more pay more tax on those flights is a perfectly logical way to treat the environmental impact of what they're doing. And I think increasingly the attitude is going to be that carbon, it's not purely one's carbon footprint. And we've this point has come up, and people are aware of it, that actually it's about carbon consumption. We have a lower carbon footprint in this country because actually we have had success with renewable energy so far, and we need to do more, as I say. But an awful lot of what we've done in terms of our manufacturing, we've exported to China and India. And when the products come in from there, they've actually been produced with, energy from coal-fired power stations. So actually the carbon footprint of what we consume is very much more. And we need to shift people's understanding and what they pay tax on towards what they consume. And these are the first sort of steps that I think are very fair, and I think is a perfectly reasonable and logical way to tax people for their consumption.
Isn't it surprising that your party wants to bring down the costs of flying twice a year, considering your net zero targets?
Well, it is. I mean, obviously, reducing the amount that they will pay, I'm going to make an assumption that someone's worked out that actually will not increase the number of flights, because that would be self-defeating. But I think it's also an acknowledgement that for a lot of working people, this cost of living crisis has been really difficult. So adjusting who pays what and putting that on the frequent flyers, the business flyers, and raising revenue from those people that are actually using a larger carbon footprint, and actually giving some relief to those hardworking people that aren't making so much money and aren't in a position to pay so much tax, is actually both an economic and a climate change target for us.
So some quick questions now. What about education? Are you going to charge VAT to private school fees?
We haven't put that in our manifesto. We don't have a plan to do that, but our focus is really on the needs of the schools and changing Ofsted to focus on a wider performance set of criteria for schools, to avoid the sort of upsetting things that have happened in the last year or two as a result of Ofsted investigations. We've put mental health as a priority. There are a lot of young people post-COVID suffering from mental health, so we want to have a mental health professional in every school, and a lot of those mental health costs will be met by the social media companies' tax that we've raising. So I think our education focus is less on taxing private schools, more on investing in the right way in our schools for the benefit of families more broadly.
And would you allow building on green belt to meet your housing quotas?
Well, the green belt is no, there isn't a plan to build on the green belt as such, but the house building programme is an ambitious one of 380,000 a year, and it's of vital importance. But I think it's an issue that relates not only to the green belt, but actually infrastructure, and where local communities and towns are already suffering with rising levels of raw sewage in rivers and whether on the seafront and on beaches, that actually we've got to tackle the fact that there needs to be infrastructure. So our ambition is not to build on the green belt. It is to build new, more environmentally sound housing in towns and cities.
Finally, why should the people of Tonbridge vote for you on the 4th of July?
Well, I think I've got the right skills to represent the people here. I've had a lifetime of representing people, advocating for them. I've spent some of that time working for charity. I've been a charity trustee of the ARC Environmental Foundation that introduced environmentally friendly products in the 1990s. I really care about the climate change and the environment. I'm passionate about those issues, but I love this part of the world. I've lived in the southeast of England all my life. I grew up in Hertfordshire. I now live in Forest Hill in southeast London. So I don't live within the constituency, to be frank with you, but I have cycled, walked, and been here for so much of my life. I love this constituency in this part of the world. I'm concerned at how many shop fronts are boarded up and closing, and I would like to bring more life back to Edenbridge and Tonbridge and the parts of this constituency. It's very much a part of the world that I've grown up in the sense of, in the southeast of England, it's around London. And I would like to do my very, very, very best for people here. And I think that a vote for the Lib Dems is actually an opportunity to actually help get rid of this Tory government that have been so disastrous for the country, and I don't think has served Tonbridge and its residents well.